everyone, I hope you're all well. I thought I'd just do a quick review of EximChain. I do quite a lot of ICO reviews on my chat channel, on my Slack chat channel. If you subscribe to my, obviously my Slack channel and do a subscription with Esoteric Trading Solutions. So this ICO review is not for financial advice or investment advice or anything like that for you. It's just for information purposes only, just for learning. I'm not a financial advisor, so please do your own due diligence and your own study and that sort of thing in terms of your own finances and everything else. Just some of the things that I actually look at in terms of when I assess an ICO myself, and just in terms of my own experience. So I'm actually doing it for my own portfolio and whether I'm going to participate in this ICO or not. So again, it's just information only. So what EximChain is doing is they're obviously using blockchain technology. They're using Ethereum as their blockchain technology to build an application that's used between small businesses, small to medium businesses, SMEs, and suppliers and buyers in terms of transporting, then in terms of paying for goods and services. So pretty much when small businesses, when they buy things from suppliers overseas or anywhere for that matter, they have to obviously pay the money for those supplies, and they have to make sure they get exactly the supplies that they're after. And when you talk about global goods and global terms of trade, often that's done through the banks through a letter of credit. And effectively that letter of credit is done through the banks, where the banks will often supply the money up front, and then the small business has to pay that money, and where the banks are basically giving the small business the credit funding, if you per se the credit funding. So the application of blockchain in this situation is basically where there would be the supplier of the goods, there'd be the buyer of those goods being the small business or the medium term business, and there would be also a credit facility, or where the money comes from to actually give the small business the credit to buy those goods from the supplier. So there's three parties involved in what you need. So in using blockchain to do that, basically everyone's using the same system in terms of making sure that the goods are supplied, or they say that they're being supplied, that the supplier knows when they're being sent. He's obviously sending them to the small business operator, and when those goods are basically sent to the small business operator, then the money gets paid out through a smart contract. And that, in the old traditional style banking, is generally done as a letter of credit. And there's always an issue with letter of credit, because as it's a letter of credit for the delivery of goods from the supplier to the business, and the funds get exchanged on the supply of those goods. And often with a letter of credit, there can be an issue with what goods they are. It may not be the exact goods that the small business was after, or the medium-sized business. So blockchain tries to fix that big problem. It tries to actually avoid that problem that businesses have had all in traditional businesses going through the traditional banking process. So this software is focused on supply chain application, and to put it very simply, it's looking at suppliers, credit and inventory management, but it's also looking to connect both the supplier and the business, and to transact that information, that supply information, as well as the payment of that supply of goods from the small business. So EximChain was a project started in 2015 by MIT students at MIT, which apparently is one of the most successful universities in the world. Apparently it's been said that it's one of the most technically based business universities in terms of business, and it's been called the number university in the world apparently for business and technology and the like. So the people that are doing this blockchain, the developers, have a very, very strong profile. And pretty much this has been developed in-house at MIT. The team's vision basically is to use blockchain to bring the global supply chain into the digital era, lowering financing barriers for small and medium-term businesses, SMEs. Now, often with small and medium-sized businesses, they can't get financing from traditional banks or from the banks, and with blockchain technology, you do an ICO, you get finance, and essentially, you can basically create a supply chain through the suppliers as well as the businesses that need those suppliers. So they're basically looking to build an app that does that, but actually does it globally. So the barriers to entry, there are no barriers to entry in terms of wherever the goods are supplied from to wherever the clients sit, and using a smart contract between the supplier and the small business owner. Goods are released on on the terms of that smart contract being done. So every term on the smart contract has been done, and essentially then the money is released, and the small business owner or whoever it might be in the business gets to take on those goods as such. So pretty much they're using Ethereum system at the moment. They're using a new consensus protocol called Quorum, and they basically want to add a quadratic voting based governance model, which basically has everyone working as such for the same they all want this model to work properly. People get privileged access for the consensus protocol into the underlying blockchain, so that everyone's being incentivized, and that the functionality is being added to the blockchain itself. So as I said, it came out of MIT in 2015. It was inception, basically being funded by MIT, and so the people that are behind this blockchain technology are MIT people that have developed it. The token sale, the ticker is going to be EXC. It's based on Ethereum standard token as such. It's going to be one SEC is roughly $33,000 Fundraising goal is a minimum 20 mil. It's going to be a total tokens of 150. So it's a pretty small. It's a very small issuance of ICO, which is some people see it as being a very good thing. Also, there'll be 40% of circulating tokens around, so it'll only be 60 million if they get up to exactly what they want. The ICO date is going to be the 15th of March, and it's going to go for a month, and the ICO emanates from the USA. The ICO will be going for a month, which is a fairly long time actually. They had their pre-ICO and that went in December, and it's a fairly long time when you compare it to, say, EximChain, which was just done recently. And that basically, the ICO only went for 2 days, and they got literally about $22.5 million, I think, on that ICO. So it's odd that this will go for such a long time, for a month. And it makes me wonder because the price of this ICO is 33 cents US compared to EximChain, which was 10 cents US. And I just feel it's a little bit expensive for me. I would have liked to have seen this a bit cheaper. Yes, I realise that they've got MIT team behind it, an international, they've got a US MIT team which are very well known internationally. And the original trial was, I think it was out of Slovenia or somewhere like that. Was it Slovenia? One of those countries, Eastern European countries, and so didn't have the, the renowned, the MIT behind them, so to speak. So, but anyway, they'll be accepting payments from Ethereum, and jurisdictions that are barred from participating are China and the United States. And I find it odd that the US can't participate in this. It seems quite odd that US investors can't actually participate. Anyway, the tokens won't be tradable until after 2 weeks when the network system's launched, which would be the second quarter of this year. 50% of the funds are going to be generated by the token will be raised for platform development, includes software, legacy system, and 25 will be built to the supply chain, and an additional 20% will be devoted to operational expenses. There's nothing really here on the white paper saying, again, how are they going to get their clients, how are they going to get their SMEs, how are they going to get their suppliers, their suppliers. and that's one of the biggest issues I have with a lot of ICOs. It doesn't actually, there's no sales or marketing, there's no sales process to how do they get clients to use the application. And that's always a big issue, because if you don't get clients to use the application, there's actually no utility for the application and no one's using it, and subsequently the coin or the utility or the token is not in use, and there's going to be no value to it. So you need SMEs using it, small businesses, medium-sized businesses. You need the credit facility or the credit providers, or the liquidity or the credit funding providers, and you also need the suppliers. So there's nothing in this ICO and the white paper to actually say how they're going to get those clients. So as I said, it will be launched on 15th of March, and it will be going for 1 month. And the company outlined a roadmap right through to the first quarter of 2019. As I said, there are problems with current supply chain industries, and look, it's very simple. This sounds quite complex, but very simply, you've got the business that needs suppliers from, say, the Middle East, for example. They want to buy, rugs, for example, from the Middle East. The supplier will send those rugs, but the main thing is the supplier wants to make sure they get paid, and the business wants to make sure that it's exactly what they ordered, that they ordered the rugs that they wanted. And in between time, you've got toing and froing, and you've got, obviously, you don't have blockchain technology, but you either have to go through a bank so that the money gets sent to the supplier. And obviously, as we've spoken before, foreign currency is always delayed because it's not instant settlement, but also it takes time for the goods to arrive. And then obviously the supply chain, no one knows where the goods are and how long it's going to take for those goods to get, say, to America from the Middle East, for example. So obviously, when the goods do hit the docks, the traditional way is with a letter of credit that's provided by the banks. It's physically, once the goods hit the docks, come in on the wharf or by shipment, those goods have to be checked to make sure that they're exactly the goods that you want. Now, in terms of this application, a blockchain, there'd be a smart contract detailing exactly what those goods are, and money would not be released until those goods were actually checked, and that's exactly the goods that you want. The old way, as I said, is with a letter of credit, which everything has to be physically checked off, and then it takes more time to release the funds. So, if this is the way it's supposed to be working, then that's a great idea, absolutely. But again, it has to be implemented, and this EximChain doesn't have a prototype or a beta model at the moment. So all this is pretty much hearsay at the moment. There's nothing in terms of a prototype or anything else. And that's exactly right. The problem is at the moment there's no supply chain where it just makes it really easy for participants to know exactly where the goods are, or where it's easy for the exporter, say the person that sent the rugs from the Middle East, knows where the goods are or where the money stands or anything like that. It's all by phone call or fax or email or something like that. And so there's no sort of trace almost on the goods, and the exporter's waiting for the money, and the person that's buying those goods wants to make sure they get exactly the right goods that they actually ordered. So basically, EximChain solution is essentially to build a product that avoids all this delay in information, delay in information between the exporter and the buyer, delay in financing, because often with small businesses and medium-sized businesses, they find it very hard to get the financing for buying goods or stocks for their business. And they want to build an application where essentially both sides of the party use that application in terms of the supply chain, so they know exactly where the goods are, where they're sitting, are they the right goods, will the money come in, is everything in agreement according to the smart contract, and then the goods will be released, and then the money will be released per se once everything's been checked off. And that time will be much more a shorter time frame than, say, the traditional letter of credit time frame, which which takes forever if you've ever ordered goods overseas and you're waiting on a letter of credit. It's just an absolute nightmare. I used to do it years ago, and my God, it would take, anything. If you order rugs from the Middle East, it could take you, up to 2 months. So using blockchain for this sort of, traditional finance and trying to get goods from overseas is a lot better idea and a lot smarter idea. Plus, it's global. It could actually be global as well. And yes, it does add to data security and transparency, and everyone that participates in the network knows exactly what's going on, and where the cash is going and when it's being paid and all that sort of thing. So I mean, it is a great idea and it's a great product if they can get it off the ground. But as I said, it is in development stage, and they need to get investors to provide working capital to small and medium businesses that would otherwise been able to access this financing. So investors invest in the ICO, the blockchain that provides the financing for them to buy, goods overseas, and pretty much order goods overseas from the supplier. The goods come in and it's checked against a smart contract, and then the SME or the business will pay that money to the supplier through the application of EximChain. And so that's it is good from that perspective. But again, you need to find businesses that are going to use this application, and suppliers that are going to use this application, and investors that obviously are going to invest in this ICO. Aspects of the technology are inventory management, sourcing, historical transactions and data, reliability of the buyer and institution, and financing. Smart contracts are used to help the bank verified orders and partners and required financing, that sort of thing. And within the smart contracts, as I said, you can put all different conditions in those smart contracts before the funds are actually released. So a smart contract is almost like a legal document where you can basically say, right, within this smart contract we ordered 10 Middle Eastern rugs that were blue, we ordered 15 that were red or whatever. The funds are not allowed to be released, unless they're Middle Eastern, red and blue, and they're made of this certain quality and all this sort of business. And that can be all put in the smart contract like a legal document. The system is supposed to risk mitigate, which it would increase operational efficiency, investment opportunity, working capital management, definitely, credit rate arbitrage, and supply chain. It would do all that. That's what the system accordingly would do once they've set the system up and they do have a prototype working or a real system working. But it yet remains to be seen because the system is not yet it's in development stage and we don't have a prototype. But the good thing is, this would help buyers verify the reliability of sellers. Suppliers could also access credit ratings of the buyers, because obviously the seller's selling their own goods and they want to make sure the buyer can actually pay for those goods. So the buyer would get a credit rating, and if they're a bad credit rating, the seller is not going to deal with them. And all this would be on blockchain. The team is verified by LinkedIn, and as I said, they are the team's from MIT. They're all trained professionals. They've got many years in supply chain experts and blockchain and IT and the like. And the main one, the main head is Hope Liu, and she's basically CEO, and she's had sort of banking and finance experience at UBS and a few other banks, but also she's been working at MIT and done blockchain and IT setup for a long time. Also, her co-founder is another fellow here called Juan Haratas, again has done many startups and is a technology wisdom consultant. And then you've got, I don't know how you pronounce these names, but Jan Hu or something, and he's the project business architect manager, and again another 14 years with Amazon and Amazon website, and then you've got another guy, Daniel Sanchez, and clearly they've got expertise in blockchain, supply chain and emerging technologies. Again, there's a lot of cases that blockchain can be put to real use in business, and it would basically be getting the investors, the suppliers and the clients to meet and basically work on the same application. And there's just an example there, Disney. The positives of this blockchain project is obviously it's been funded by MIT, and MIT, as I said, probably the number one. I've been told, I don't have stats for this, but I've been told they're one of the number one universities in the world. The token, in my mind, is not that cheap. It is a utility token, but I think there's cheaper alternatives out there. As I said to you before, EximChain, they just did a recent ICO a couple of days ago, whatever it was, and their ICO price was 10 cents US, and not very much different to this one. Yes, they did have more on supply and circulating capital. I think about 254 million. So look, as I said, the advantages are, yes, they've got great people behind this utility token, this application. Reasonably strong roadmap, low circulating market cap, 20 mil plus, all up 60 million on issue, 40% of the total issue. They have got partnerships with SMEs in China, but in terms of Chinese regulation, I'm not sure how much they can rely on this. I mean, it's great they do have partners, and if it is supply partners, then that's a great story. If it is supply partners, I think it is actually. So that's a good story in itself, and they seem to know exactly what they're doing, which is a good story as well. Also, this project to me sounds much more long-term in its horizon, and that's probably where you'll get the benefit of this project in the longer term. So it would be a hold for the longer term, because the pricing of this project being 10 cents, being 33 cents compared to say something for 10 cents, for a short-term sell on listing, 33 cents is not going to be a lot more in it. The right paper identifies as a big gap in small, medium enterprise supply chain financing, and there's a good reason for that. The banks can't be bothered dealing with small businesses or medium enterprise businesses under 500 mil. They generally, just don't. The amount of work they have to do is just as much as for a business that's a billion or whatever. So there is a lot of work for them to do, and particularly with letter of credit, it's a very onerous thing to have to do. And so I guess the small medium enterprise businesses, so particularly in Australia, are very underbanked, if you want to call it that. And certainly if you believe the figures from the World Bank, which I suspect that's right, 2 trillion globally, it is an area of business that is very underbanked and undercatered for. So certainly blockchain technology would cater for this line of business very well. And again, as I said, MIT has been ranked by someone, QS World University Rankings, as the number one. My thing, as I said before, the negatives I do have is how do they get the clients, and that's the first thing. They need to get small and medium businesses to use this app, this utility. The suppliers, they need to get the suppliers to use it. Obviously they need to get the investors like us. Are we going to buy the ICO or not, to get the capital? And to me, the suppliers and the clients hasn't really been addressed enough, and often with a lot of these ICOs they're just not, and that always bothers me, because that really is going to tell you whether there's going to be longevity in this utility or not going forward. So, and also competition block-based supply chain applications on the rise. As I said, EximChain did theirs just recently, and they raised, I think, about 18,000 Ethereum. And again, just a little bit of info about EximChain, very similar sort of process. I think their blockchain was on Ethereum technology, but it didn't have blockchain where you could actually build to it later on and offer that technology to other companies that wanted to do blockchain as well. But with EximChain, they raised 22.5 million. The coin was an ICO of 10 cents US, 15th of January to the 17th. Sorry, the spelling was an error there. And currently today that's priced at 24 cents. Circulating supply is 254 million. They had 9,000 Telegram subscribers, Facebook 2,162, and Twitter of 7242. So their hype was a bit better also compared to EximChain. So they certainly had more subscribers than EximChain, mainly possibly because it is a bigger circulating supply, but still the price was a lot cheaper and a very similar type of utility coin as such. Also, there are other, big companies like IBM, which are doing, technical blockchains with big companies like Walmart, for example. So, the competition is on the increase, and that's always a risk for a supply chain blockchain model like EximChain. Also, the strangest things is that the US and China are both barred from this ICO, which is sort of weird, the US particularly. So I find that quite odd. But also, in the white paper, they do emphasise that this is not a speculative ICO, and it doesn't surprise me because basically, to me, this ICO is not priced cheap. I think at 33 cents, you've really got to wait for the working blockchain to be applied to get any growth out of it, and that growth could take a bit longer than what you think, just simply because these sort of applications are hard to implement, and it's hard to get the suppliers, and it's hard to get the businesses to actually use this blockchain. So just looking at the hype, and the hype for this was lower than original trial, which worries me a bit. Twitter was only 143, Facebook was 523, which is really low. Reddit, no one in Reddit, which I look at a lot, is talking about it. Telegram did have 12,500, which is reasonable. The good thing is they do have a low circulating market cap, as I said, 20 mil to possibly 60 mil. But my biggest problem is I don't think this is that cheap, and I'd rather wait for this thing to go on the secondary market for me, for my own personal finances. This is my own opinion, and you guys have to trade according to how you think and how you want to buy it or whatever in terms of your own investments. But for me, to me, there's no short-term opportunity to flip this just simply because of the price of it. And I just feel it could have been a bit cheaper priced. And also, the thing is, it is hard to implement these type of blockchains because you have to get buy-in from suppliers, finances, and businesses, small business, medium-term businesses, and the like. And I just don't feel that's been addressed enough in this paper, particularly the sales side, particularly. So for me, and also another thing is there's no prototype model or beta type model. So for me, I will stay out of the ICO on this one. This is my own personal, and I'll wait for the secondary market and just see where it trades on the secondary market. Now, I haven't read other reviews about this, and other companies like myself that charge a lot more subscription than I do, and they're all saying buy at ICO level. But look, me, I would rather wait and see what happens, on the secondary market first. And see what happens there, to see how it trades, because I just feel, for me, they're not giving this away, and 33 cents is it's not as cheap as Origin Trail, which was at 10 cents, which is more of comfort for me, particularly when there's no prototype. And again, these sort of blockchains and supply chains are very difficult to implement due to all the different players within the supply chain and the client per se. So I'm going to wait and won't be participating in the ICO, but I'll see what happens. And as I said to you guys, you need to do your own due diligence and own analysis, and this isn't personal advice. So I hope you're all well. Sorry this went on a bit late, but I hope you get something out of this, and I'll talk to you soon, guys. Take care, look after yourself, be kind to yourself, be kind to everyone around you. Life is short, and please do what you want to do. Thank you.